Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. And welcome to Wednesday's edition of the DCU Daily. From the moment it was announced that Fantastic Four and Superman will be releasing near the same dates, DC fans and Marvel fans have become incredibly nervous. And as a DC fan and an MCU admirer, I'm very nervous about both films hurting each other. There is a cost of living crisis, but you would imagine that nerds will go and see both movies. But as night follows day, one is going to be more successful than the other. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of noise around Fantastic Four, but there does seem to be a hell of a lot of noise around Superman and hype. That would kind of make you maybe wrongly think that Fantastic Four is not going to succeed and is going to be a disaster, and Superman is going to succeed because there's all this talk around it. Well, there was lots of talk around The Flash, and that was a financial disaster. So be very careful. We haven't seen a trailer for Fantastic Four yet. Once we do, then we'll know what's going on. But it is interesting. Will Fantastic Four be delayed till November? It would be something. It would literally make every DC fan very happy and stop that nervousness. I don't know. But where's the trailer to Fantastic Four? Now, James Gunn and DC Studios and Warner Brothers Discovery have already released their trailer for their Superman movie, releasing in July. It could be, because we haven't had a trailer for Fantastic Four yet, we're probably going to get something at the Super Bowl, right? If I'm making the right assumptions. But as we get closer and closer to February, it's very, very unlikely that Fantastic Four gets delayed. We will see. Unlikely, but not impossible. And, I believe if Fantastic Four was to do a bigger box office than Superman, this would be one of the biggest upsets in cinematic history, because nobody is expecting that. Somewhere along the way, the MCU, Marvel Studios, became the underdog to DC Studios, and they've only released one animated series on streaming. But at the moment, it's all talk. It doesn't really matter. But it is shocking that a Marvel Studios Fantastic Four movie isn't the favourite to win the box office versus a DC movie called Superman. Now, we know that Superman's a massive character. You look at the, previous Superman movies' box offices, it is interesting. Superman 78 made near on around 400 million at the time. That was an outstanding record-breaking box office for WB and the Salkinds production team. It was huge back then. There wasn't IMAX, there wasn't 3D, there wasn't a multitude of multiplexes, there was very few cinemas. It was a huge hit. And now, if you adjust it for inflation, Superman 78 is $1 billion box office hit. So actually, if you adjust for inflation, Superman 78 is the most successful Superman movie to be released. If you don't, Man of Steel is. It's the way you want to do it. But basically, adjusting for inflation is important. Now, if you released Superman 78, in 1978, if there was IMAX and there was all the cinemas, that there's around today, then you could be talking about $2 billion for Superman 78. So I think no matter how you want to spin it or twist it, Superman 78 is the most successful Superman movie of all time. Superman 2 made slightly less, Superman 3 made even less, but still a solid hit. Superman 4 was a flop. Superman Returns, really, you have to call a flop. Didn't even make 400 million with all the cinemas around at the time. They probably spent near on 300 million on that movie, so that was not a success. That was a flop. Man of Steel was not a flop, just over 650 million. So it's interesting when you look at previous Superman movies' box offices, because it's not like any of them have set anything alight. I think Superman 78, you can say, wow, whether you adjust it for inflation or not, that's brilliant. Man of Steel at 650, just around 650, is solid box office, but it was such an expensive film to make, and that's why Warner Brothers weren't happy with the money it brought in. 650 million box office for a film is nothing to be sneezed at. It's a Superman film in the modern day with all the bells and whistles. Yes, it should have made more money, but it was a controversial movie in that, the next snapping moment where Superman kills Zod is the moment that hurt the box office to that movie. As I've said many times before, take that moment out, that movie makes near on $1 billion. But there's also other moments that people didn't like Jonathan Kent's death. I think it's a great way of doing it. Jonathan sacrificing himself for his son's secret, as he did in Smallville. But maybe the execution could have been slightly better. If I'm being honest about it, it doesn't bother me. I don't look for plot holes and things like that. But yeah. But anyway, that's history. But now you've got these two films, Fantastic Four and Superman, and they are in competition with each other. People will try and spin it and say, well, they're not in competition, but they are. And being released that close together, at the end of the day, people have only got a certain amount of money. So it's going to be very interesting. But as I say, Fantastic Four was to make more money than Superman. It would be a huge upset because all the smart money is going on Superman being this huge hit. We've seen the trailer views. Now, if they're to be believed, then I have trouble believing anything that comes out statistically from the industry these days, especially since we heard the box office of Captain Marvel. I still find it very hard to believe that that film made $1 billion, but it could have done because the MCU was riding high. It was just before Endgame, Avengers Endgame, so people were waiting and they had the cliffhanger. Infinity War was a great movie. Infinity War was a better movie than Endgame. Endgame was just a time-wasting blag, if you ask me. But obviously the whole I Am Iron Man thing was pretty compelling. And, Marvel has really struggled since then, and DC hasn't done much better. So I don't think either DC fans or Marvel fans should be bragging right now. Neither have bragging rights, although the MCU did succeed for 3 phases. We have to be honest about that, and did much better financially than the DCEU. I still think the DCEU Snyderverse had better, more interesting, compelling movies. That's just my personal opinions. But the MCU was great and had a lot of great movies. Let's not get it twisted. But the MCU's at a lull now. No one's really interested in the MCU. The hype, everyone talking about it. You barely hear people talking about the MCU with the same vigor and excitement on social media as you did. So this is a big moment. Because if Superman was to succeed and make more money than Fantastic Four, it's a big moment. It hammers Marvel Studios. And if you think, we keep on talking about how Superman has to succeed to launch the DCU. Well, Fantastic Four, Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige are under the same pressure. Maybe even more, because if that film doesn't succeed, where's the MCU? Because Fantastic Four is part of the reset. The Russos are coming back to do 2 Avengers movies. They've announced Robert Downey Jr. returning as well, which is very exciting for fans. But was it desperate? Was it the right move? We'll see how people, the box office will tell us everything. Will Robert Downey Jr. cameo in Fantastic Four? I think so, and he needs to, because that would really get a lot of hype going as well. So it really is an interesting situation with Fantastic Four and Superman really needing to be successful. And it's interesting. Will they both make good money? They could both make the same money. But I think, as I said earlier, the law of averages would say, we know how life works. One's going to fail and one's going to succeed. And I don't even think it's because they're releasing near the same time. And we'll see if Fantastic Four, decides, not to go hell for leather and go straight for the throat of Superman. But it was an interesting decision by Marvel Studios to release it so close to Superman. Superman really is a film that knew when he wanted to release. Superman will not be delayed. Superman is coming July the 11th. They're very confident about this film. I've sat here and told you, I don't know. I don't know if this film's going to be good, if it's going to work. But James Gunn and the studio are confident about this film. That's why they're making other plans. That's why they're doing a Sergeant Rock movie. That's why they've already, started making a Supergirl movie. They're confident about what they're doing. James Gunn's confident, and WB are confident in James Gunn's ability to launch this. But we live in a very unpredictable consumer industry time. It's not like the old days where the industry knew what's going to be big and what's not. It's unpredictable. Nobody knows, even, look, I understand the complaints people had with Joker Folie and Noir, Joker 2. But I think the box office was still shocking. Because of the last movie, you would have expected that to have some kind of positive knock-on effect, but people rejected the musical element. People are bringing up lots of reasons why Joker Folie and Noir failed, but I think people just don't want to see a musical CBN. It's utterly off-putting if you ask me. But, the other stuff obviously had a contributing factor. Reviews obviously had a contributing factor. It's a film a lot of people don't like. I appreciate it as an individual piece of work. We'll never know if this was a tantrum from the director, if he was so angry by being forced to do a sequel that he made this film the way he did. We will never know that. He denies that, by the way. We'll never know. But at the end of the day, the film failed. So, DC films have been failing for a very long time. Badly. I mean, you look back, you can call Man of Steel a success. BVS, yes, you can't say that flopped, but they, again, wanted to make more money. Suicide Squad, nearly 800 million. Wonder Woman, nearly 800 million, did really, really well. Obviously, Justice League was a disaster. Aquaman made $1 billion. Shazam is classed as a hit only because it was made for under 100 million. And then after Shazam, everything flops, apart from Joker. Absolute disaster, and this is what happens when you divide a fan base. It didn't help that the films weren't very good, of course. And then James Gunn comes out, he's appointed as the co-CEO of DC Studios. Then people know the DCEU hasn't got a future, and that does have a contributing factor for the flops. But we do live in unpredictable times, and I keep on hearing a lot of blags out there. I heard this blag yesterday that Rachel Brosnahan's performance is so good that she's being touted as the best Lois Lane in live action ever. Stop. That's disrespectful to every actor who's ever played Lois. There has never been a bad Lois Lane. And of course, Rachel Brosnahan is a critically acclaimed actress. She's amazing. I expect her to be amazing in this role. I expect David Corenswet to be amazing as Superman and Clark Kent, and probably clone Superman or whoever that character is. But with Superman, it's important the public embrace him as that character, and that's the difficulty of doing iconic characters. You never know. So I do think it's an interesting situation with Fantastic Four and Superman. I do feel one will do better than the other, and I feel that one may actually be a total disaster in the box office. And as I said, Fantastic Four is the reset. Captain America and all the others they're releasing, and Ironheart, they don't care about them. They know they're a disaster. That was part of the old plan. They made them. They have to release them. They're probably not going to do very, very well. Maybe Captain America may have solid box office because New World Order, because it's got Red Hulk, and Harrison Ford, I think, from what I've been told by people who have got inner knowledge, his performance is brilliant, and he could be the reason that film could be half decent. bit like how Robert Redford was amazing in Winter Soldier. But Winter Soldier was great. Chris Evans was great. Everyone was great in Winter Soldier. It was well directed, well written. It was part of the peak period of the MCU. We shall see.